Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote. Hello, welcome back to Across the Park podcast. My name is, of course, Ian Mills. Thank you for clicking this thumbnail, and you know who the guest is by clicking it. I'm a big fan of this man. We're in the amazing Pod Cafe studios with an amazing guest. He is the voice of Goodison Park's final ever season. Rossie, Mr. Simon Ross, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm very good, Millsy. Very good indeed. And what an intro that was, by the way. I am not worthy, but thank you very much for those kind words.
Oh, you absolutely are. I've been a big fan of you, mate, since the Radio City days when I discovered you on the old 10 o'clock slot after CD.
That's right.
I've been a big fan for a while, and I think you bring a lot to Goodison Park. I really do. We'll get into that. Going to be a football podcast, and we'll dip into a little bit of other things as well about yourself, but growing up as a young boy over in Ireland, was football a big part of your life? And who were your teams? Who were your players?
Well, I didn't have one team growing up. Obviously, there was Gaelic football because I grew up in Ireland, obviously in Northern Ireland. And our family had a very, very big Gaelic football background. I wasn't very good at it. My sport was swimming and a sport called handball, which is huge in Ireland. I don't think it's played much over here. It's played in what appears to be like a bigger squash court, a bigger version of a squash court, and it's a rubber ball and you play with your hand and handball. So the teams I kind of liked were Leeds United. My grandfather, he liked West Ham United, so I kind of liked. And then there's a good friend of my dad's formed a football team called Everton Milford. So he was a big Evertonian. So that kind of got me interested in the mighty Blues of Everton as a kid growing up. So I wasn't a hardened football fan, but like any sport, I would have sat and watched it, you know what I mean? And I used to love watching the Pools results coming in. I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember that on a Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely.
League Division 1. I used to love that. And I always had a soft spot for Everton.
Well, that brings me on to my next question, really, and it'd be interesting to get your scope on it. So you're watching the amazing 80s Everton side, probably not as an Evertonian, but how was it watching Everton back then? Were they even to someone who's not an Evertonian, just an amazing side? Because I'm brought up on how good that side was.
The teams throughout the 80s were something else. And I mean, we've got great players with great heart today. But I mean, the one that stands out for me the most is the one that caused Sir Elton John to cry in the Royal Box at Wembley Stadium in 1984, Watford. That was an incredible day. You know, I just think for sport in general, I think even if you weren't a fan of football, that particular FA Cup final was amazing. And if I recall properly, it was a really good sunny day. Yeah. And it was just start to finish was probably one of my teenage 80s best memories of Everton.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm similar to you. The FA Cup final, regardless of who was playing, it took over that day. I think BBC used to have it from midday right up until around 7, and it was always a big event. But we're talking about you over in Ireland there as a young boy, and as we transition into what you are now, sort of a radio presenter and a really good DJ. But that wasn't your first calling in life. I believe you can knock up an omelette, okay? Can you?
Funny, I had one this morning actually. I got some smoked salmon that was on the turn. Well, it wasn't on the turn. Its sell by date was today, so I got cheap. So I had a nice smoked salmon omelette. Yes, I wasn't sure what I was doing, and I was doing O levels, and got way behind. And then a mate of mine was a chef. And he got me a job as a waiter in a hotel. But I used to see the chefs, and you know, there was something about chefs that really made me think I'd love to do that. And I couldn't cook really. And then I did a pre-catering course, and I excelled at that. So I went from being bottom of the class in my O-level courses to actually top of Northern Ireland, I think, when I did my pre-catering. Because I liked it, I excelled. If I'm not interested, and my daughter's a carbon copy of me now. She's 18. If she loves it, she excels. And then I applied to get on a course and ended up going to Belfast for 2 years and studying and working. And this wonderful course that was actually terminated. We were the last students to do it. It was quite an expensive course. And then I got a job down in Waterford, working in a wonderful seafood restaurant in a beautiful place called Dunmore East. Now, at the time at 18, it wasn't for me. I wanted music and lights and nightclubs and discos. Okay. This was a quaint fishing village, right down in this southern part of Waterford. Now, that would be my idea of heaven. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I worked around there, Kerry, back up home in the north of Ireland to Armagh, where I was born and bred. And I worked there for a while, but I really wanted to better myself and I wanted to move to London and work in some of the fine restaurants in London, which I did do. But when I was training to be a chef, a mate of mine asked me to do some mobile discos. Again, hadn't a clue. First gig, Christmas Eve, cricket club in Armagh. I hadn't a jar of glue what I was doing, but I just got on and winged it. And, so I got this idea that I wanted to do radio, but I didn't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And I used to listen constantly in the kitchen. And then someone said, have you tried doing hospital radio? I went, hospital radio. So I applied to a few stations, got a gig Saturday morning doing a request show. And then I did a bit out in Australia while I was cooking out there and sort of traveling a little bit around Australia. And I really picked up a lot more experience out there and I became friends with some really good broadcasters. And when I came back, I was cooking and still doing the hospital radio. And I was demoing, just sending out demo tape. And I remember the girl I was seeing at the time, a lovely girl called Maria, heard this demo. I said, I'm giving up. And she goes, that demo is going to that's the best demo you've ever had. That's the best you've sounded. And I sent it out and I got 3 job offers. And one was Radio HMV in London. Okay. And then Radio Top Shop. And then Cool FM in Northern Ireland flew me over and had a chat as well. So I ended up doing in-store radio in London. And that's how I got started.
Wow, amazing. But before we concentrate on music, I've got to ask, what's your signature dish? What are you still knocking up now? That's a 5-star.
I can cook a curry as good as any Indian person. And I've challenged many of friends from various parts of India. And I said, I will challenge my curry against yours with my roti against yours. And I normally win.
You know what you've got to do now? You've got to give me a bit of your curry to try.
Do you know what? When we were done and dusted with this podcast, I will get all your details. I've got your number. And how hot do you like it, by the way?
Not too hot.
Oh, right.
A bit of a... I don't mind a little bit of a kick, but I don't want to be...
Right,
not eyebrows. Okay.
I'm not... Korma to me is chicken in a custard with cardamom seeds and turmeric. It's korma. It's not for me.
You're talking there, and I can see you're passionate about music. What were your bands? What were your tunes growing up? Interested in?
Giddy aunt. To be honest, I loved glam rock. So I was born in '67, so I don't remember much about the '60s. Obviously, people who were partying in the '60s don't remember an awful lot about the '60s.
Swinging '60s.
Yeah, they say if you remember the '60s, then you were doing it wrong. So '70s glam rock, Slade and Alvin Stardust and bands like that. And then the disco era kicked in. I'm a massive fan of Donna Summer. I love Donna Summer. So I loved that. And then suddenly I went down the avenue of like the punk. I loved the Ramones, bands like Stiff Little Fingers from Northern Ireland. You'll have heard of the Undertones, Fergal Sharkey's old band. I was really into that kind of genre of music. The Clash. Loved a bit of mod stuff as well, and ska was really good. And then along came a band called Duran Duran, and my life and image changed dramatically. I mean, and I'll show you after the podcast a picture of me in '85. I got mistaken for John Taylor all the time. I know I look nothing like him, but I dressed like him. I had my hair like him. I would just lived and breathed Duran Duran. Take the ultimate Evertonian that you have ever met, that lives, breathes, walks, talks Everton. That was me about Duran back in the 1980s.
Wow.
Oh, weirdo.
Did you ever meet them? Or?
I did meet them, actually. And I didn't meet them until I'd moved to Liverpool. They were playing at what was then the Echo Arena. And I knew a lady high up at the Echo Arena. And I said, look, I've always wanted to meet them. So I met John Taylor, Nick Rhodes, Simon Le Bon, and Roger Taylor, the drummer. He was there. Andy Taylor wasn't on that tour, the guitarist. And I met them. And I wasn't let down. When they say don't meet your heroes. Yeah, they were really, really pleasant, really nice. So that was good.
That's always nice to hear. I'm a little bit the same with, you probably know him better than I do, Big Duncan. When you meet Big Duncan, they say don't meet your heroes, but he is such a nice guy.
Do you know, I'll tell you something. It was last weekend, the game against Manchester United, and Duncan was pitch side.
Yes.
I had to look twice. That man has gone back in years. I went, oh my God, he looks as young now as he did when he was playing.
Yeah.
He looked amazing. And yes, I've obviously shook his hand and spoken to him briefly a couple of times. And he's always been great. I've seen him out and about. When he was still playing with us, I've seen him out in the Sir Thomas a couple of times, and I got chatting to him.
Yeah.
He was always very pleasant, and he's got a big heart. And I think the last team he managed up in Scotland, I don't think he took a salary from it because they were having financial. I'm not sure about that, but that's what I heard. And
I think you're right. I think he was funding some of the away hotels for the staff and players.
You've got to salute anybody that's that generous. So, and that just shows you. He's not money motivated. He's there for the passion of the game, which is lovely. And
it means everything to a fan that you, Duran Duran, meet, Duncan, when you meet them, and they're so cool. So it's a nice story. You said there, you're talking here now that you're in the Echo Arena and you're part of the city, and we're going to get into Everton very shortly, but what brought you to this part of the world? What was it, simply work? Or
Yes, it was. Now, I worked at Rock FM over in Preston, so I worked there for 6 years between 92 and 98. And then the ultimate goal for me was to work in Capital Radio, as it was, when it was a station for London and the surrounding area. And that was the pinnacle. That was the creme de la creme of commercial radio. So they flirted with me for a while, and then they phoned me out of the blue, and I said, no, listen. And they went, no, we've got a job offer this time. We've got an offer. Come down in the next couple of days. We've got a contract for you. So I went to my bosses at Rock and said, look, I've still got a little while to go in my current contract, and they let me out, which was kind. And I worked down there for 3 years. I did the early breakfast show, handing over to Chris Tarrant every morning, and that was a buzz. Another great guy, by the way. Absolutely very, very nice man off there. Funny. And a little bit naughty.
Any funny stories that you can give us?
Oh, well, I'll come back to that one. There's one in particular, but I really can't. I really, really can't. But
off air, you can tell me.
Yeah. So that sounds like I'm teasing, but, it's, it's one of those. Let's just say Tarrant wouldn't have been shy in the shower room.
Okay,
so I'll just leave it there. It's a family show. And so then I moved from there to Leeds, and I worked as the stadium announcer at Leeds United for 2 or 3 seasons as well. And at the time, a friend and my daughter's godfather was captain, a guy called Dominic Matteo, who famously played on the opposite side of the park many moons ago. And, that was a great period. It was just shortly after they were in the semis of the Champions League. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
2001, maybe?
2001 it was, yeah. And it was the season after when I became the stadium announcer. And then I had a love affair with Liverpool, as in the city.
Yeah.
Really loved this city. I'd been in a few times with Seedy. I would come across and stay with him. And I just loved the vibe. I remember my first night in Liverpool was a Sunday night. We were in West Derby, and we went to the Sefton, and I walked in there, and I'm not lying to you, it smacked the pants of any Saturday night out in any major city in the world that I've been in. And this was Sunday evening. And then, and I think I was single. So, I was like, oh my God, the city, this is brilliant. Everything was buzzing. And I remember CD saying, come on, we'll go somewhere else. I'm going, I don't want to leave here. So I'll take you somewhere even better. Can't be beating this place. We ended up going to Reds, in the Devonshire.
I absolutely do, yeah.
So we ended up, I'm going, is this really Sunday night? And then, towards the end of the night, he says, let's go for a Chinese. I was 2:30 in the morning into Chinatown.
The Scouse staple, yeah.
Oh my giddy aunt. It was, again, like a busy Saturday night at 2:30 in the morning in this Chinese restaurant I went into. No alcohol. CD knew somebody. Along came this big teapot full of wine. and there began my love affair with this amazing city. So I moved here in 2005, April 2005. So it's going to be my 20th anniversary. So I've lived in Liverpool longer than I've ever lived in Ireland.
Wow.
So, and I'm very proud to be Irish. Of course I am. But I'm also very much proud to be an adoptive Scouser, and I feel that I am because of the way I've been treated since I've lived here. and this is where I want to stay. Because
Home.
this is my home. My wife's from here, and obviously my daughter was born and bred in Liverpool. So
she's got the Scouse accent, I imagine.
Yeah, she has got this. Here's a funny thing, right? My daughter Nancy's very mellow spoken, unless she's getting mad with her daddy, and my wife's very politely spoken, quietly spoken. When those two get gabbing together, it's like going back in time and watching an episode of the Liverbirds. I kid you, I'm going, wow, it's like, how Scouse are you sounding, girls? But it's like when I go back to Ireland, if I go back for more than, say, 3 or 4 days, I pick up a little bit of the Northern Ireland twang really? Again. People will say to me, have you been back home recently? And I'm like, yes, I can hear it coming back in your accent a little bit,
Well, they're not too dissimilar. The accents, they speak fast and quick. And
yeah, I think, I often say Liverpool is like the 33rd county of Ireland in many ways. There's so many Irish that come here to study, and they put down the roots and they stay here, and they never go back. And I think it's because they feel it's like a home from home, and that's definitely what I would describe living here as, a home from home. I go to my local pub. I actually like going to the pub more than I like the drink, if you know what I mean.
The crack, yeah.
I love the crack. So you walk in there and, you have a mate who's a professor, mate who's head of high up in Unite. You've got another guy who's a brickie. So all walks of life. And you've got to be able to take stick. And you've got to be able to give it, So it's. I just love going and having the crack and the banter and just catching up. And one of my mates in particular is a diehard Blue, Kenny. He's like, born and bred, Evertonian. And so we always have a good natter and chat.
Yeah, it's like that here. I think I'm biased, but I think particularly for Evertonians, you're diehard or you're not.
Yeah.
And I know we've got another big team in the city and stuff, but I'm biased. I do think Evertonians have got that real passion for the club. And look, I want to ask you about Radio City.
Yeah.
It was a staple of the city. It was such a big part. Radio's changed now where you listen on devices and things, but back in the FM days, I knew the routine. I knew it was Kev Seed, it was you, it was Rick Horton. I just knew. And then you had Pete Price in the night time doing a phone in.
Yeah.
The sports on a Saturday was unbelievable. Ian St. John, Ian Snowden, Steve Hottasall.
Yeah.
Do you look back at those Radio City days in fondness? And because for me, I was a huge fan of the station.
Well, it was a station that I really, really wanted to work at. Okay, so it was. Radio has changed dramatically, but when I joined Radio City, there were 2 stations. Eventually, 3. City Talk launched in 2007, 2008. And that building, the tower, luckily, because I was in early, I got a seat. If you weren't in early, you were really scrambling to get a chair, to seat. It was that busy with producers, writers, journalists. Then you had the sales team on the top floor. You had creative people. You had producers of sound, as in jingles and idents, and then you had producers of ads, and then engineers. So it was really, a night out, a works night out was just tremendous.
I can imagine.
Our Christmas party was normally in January because a lot of us were quite busy in the December. And the then boss, Richard Maddock, used to organise a coach to take us to Haydock races. And then we'd all end up back in town after the races, normally the Sir Thomas. And it was like, it was phenomenal. It was some of the best parties and best times of my life. So obviously it's changed over the years, and there's been networking and more networking, and with networking there's less jobs, so where there would have been maybe 20 shows, then there's one person doing it, and I'm very fortunate to still be doing what I love every morning. So many know, but some may not know, I'm no longer in the tower. So the tower is no longer home to Radio City, our hits radio as it's become, our greatest hits radio. So I work out of Manchester, and my boss has very kindly, organised transport for me in the morning to get me to Manchester, which is a good thing, a really good thing. And I must admit, I was dreading leaving the tower, and I was dreading the move. And I'm not very good with change. I'm not good with change at all. But I've been shocked at how quickly I've settled in to the new building and the new studios. The first couple of days I was all over the place because I'm not technical at all. And it was like what was an extension of my fingers in the tower. I was having to think about where I was pushing buttons and this, that and the other. And I I felt I'm never going to find my feet. But by the end of the first week, I had. And the people that I work with, I'm seeing a lot more people, because when I was in the tower since COVID, there was my producer, Al, brilliant producer, and myself. There was Leanne, Joel, and their producer, Aaron. That was it.
Wow.
That was it. So you went from a really busy hub of activity to a couple of people.
Yeah.
And then if I was on holidays, maybe my breakfast show would come from London or Manchester. It could be Richard Allenson or Andy Crane doing it. So there'd be 2 less people in there. So there'd be 3. And then obviously some of the sales staff would be coming in during the week, but not like what they used to. A lot of people are working remotely. So it had changed in that way. Mm-hmm. It certainly wasn't the vibey, bouncing, vibrant place that it was when I joined. But let me tell you this, I nearly made it 20 years there. I have never, ever in my life taken for granted the view that I looked out on every morning. I could see from when I make my coffee in the kitchen, I could look over and I could see Goodison, Anfield, and down there to my left, our new stadium.
Yeah.
I could see all 3 stadiums, which were all of ours.
Amazing.
Which were,
and I think the theme, I want to come on to Goodison. I want Goodison to be a big part of what we talk about.
Yeah.
But the tower as well, it's sort of a similar theme. We losing Goodison and you don't work in the tower. Is there a tinge of sadness that you're not in the tower? I know you're still smashing it on Greatest Hits Radio and your breakfast show, and I listen to that.
Oh, thank you.
But not in the tower, does it feel a little bit, a tinge of sadness?
Yeah, do you know what? I get off at Lime Street every day. I catch the train from Victoria and I see the tower every single day of my life. So, as I mentioned, I've got over it quicker than I thought. Given the chance, if things were different, would I like to still be doing my show from the tower? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I cannot fault the new studios are beautiful, and as I say, the people that I meet on a daily basis in the studios in Manchester are lovely. So I couldn't be made more welcome. But if it was the case that we're still in the tower, I'd be delighted to still be working there.
Yeah.
I'd like to have made it 20 years, which would have been April the 16th this year.
Wow. Okay.
But didn't quite get there.
Look, let's move on to the mighty Blues, as you perfectly say it most bi-weekly at Goodison Park. Am I right in thinking that the gig at Radio City got you in as part of their match day and their sports channels that got you into Goodison to do the announcing?
Yeah, well, there's 2 announcers at Anfield. You've got George, and then you had the great late Phil Easton.
Of course, yeah.
A dear friend of mine. And I have a lovely story to tell you about that very soon. Sad story as well. I miss him terribly. He was doing the pitch side announcing at Anfield, and George does the team news and stuff. Mm-hmm. Where we've just got one announcer at Goodison. So because of my experience at Leeds United, the gig became available, and they asked me to do it. And do you know, I was a little bit reluctant, because I was doing so many gigs and I was doing a weekend show as well. I thought, but I was soon, persuaded.
Yeah.
And it was something that I thought, my God, how could I have ever been reluctant about that in the first place? It was just like a no-brainer. But I was thinking, maybe selfishly, my free time and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it's not work, is it? You're sitting in the dugout between 2 Premier League teams, and you're seeing, Premier League football from the best seat in the house, and you're announcing, and you're getting to meet players, etc., etc. It's a dream gig. It's a dream gig. So yeah, that was part of Radio City's. That they, as part of the commentary, that was it. They had to supply stadium announcer. Yeah. So for the commentaries, they supplied the stadium announcer. So Radio City paid me. Now it's different. I work for myself, and Everton pay me.
Wow, okay. You've mentioned there the late great Phil Easton. Now, I actually recall, it's funny to say that, I recall listening to you on air just after his passing, and I think you've done a nice sort of tribute to him, and you used to say that you had a bit of banter in the car park, he was red, and you sort of give the Everton bit back. Do you want to talk about Phil? Or?
Well, this is the strange thing. We did ahead of a derby, we did, what was the Irish TV channel? Was it Setanta?
Setanta, that's right.
Setanta, yeah. And we both did red and blue. I think it was a good 25-minute piece shortly before Phil's passing. So I think it was an FA Cup tie or something, and we drew at Anfield or something like that, and there was a replay at Goodison. Am I right in saying that?
So that would have
February
been
2009. Yes. So I'd been to Ireland for the weekend, and I was watching Liverpool played Chelsea on the Sunday, and they came from behind and they gave Chelsea a bit of a spanking. I think it was 4-2. That morning, we used to wait for one another, depending on who got first, in the car park, St. John's car park. It had snowed heavily overnight. So when I got to the car park, I looked at the ramp and there was no car tracks. So I knew Phil wasn't in.
Yeah.
So when he came in, I said, I knew I was in before you this morning. He goes, oh, why's that? I said, there's no car, there's no tracks on the ramp. And we're chatting away and I went, oh God, I'm not looking forward to this replay on Wednesday after the way you guys played last night. I said, the way you turned that around. I'm not.
You're thinking like a real Evertonian there, because I hate the derbies as well.
No, it's like, so that was the Monday, and my breakfast show used to finish at 10. Phil and Kim, theirs finished at 9. So every morning I would say to Phil, only a swine would leave at 9. Real men stay till 10. Okay, every morning. It's like a stock record. And I remember the last thing I ever said to Phil, because he would have been in attendance on the Wednesday night at Goodison. And I was leaving, and I don't know what he was doing, and he was sitting at his desk, and I went, all right, see you in the morning in the car park. And I went, and remember, only a swine would leave at 9, real men stay till 10. And he goes, change the record, Mr. Rossie. We both laughed, and that was it.
Yeah.
That evening, I got a text message from Kev Seed. It was bad news about Phil. So my reply was, Phil who? He says, I think you better ring me. And then he told me, and you could have knocked me down with a feather. The really sad thing was doing the tribute to him the next morning. It was very, very hard at 8:15. And then on the Wednesday night, having to read a testament to him, because he had a lot of respect outside of the park. Phil Easton, the Blues had a lot of respect for him. And looking at his photograph up on the screen, that was very, very tough. Really one of the toughest things I've ever done. But, he's fondly remembered. He was a wonderful broadcaster and extremely great company. Extremely great company. And Phil is only when he passed, he's only 1 year older than I am now. He was 59. He didn't see 60.
Good.
But, a great man. A great man.
Yeah, it's that. Thank you so much for that story. It's made the hairs go a little bit there. But I do recall your tribute on Radio City. Some of that stuck with me, because I think you... Again, I'm not blowing smoke because you're here, but you're so good at how you purvey your words and stuff, and it hit me back then as a 20-odd-year-old. So, look, you're in Goodison Park and you're working alongside some great people. Now, I know some people at the club because I'm lucky enough to do this podcast, but I've always heard that on a match day, it's a mini city. The community is great. Did you quickly find that was the case? It was a good place to work?
Yeah, I worked for a guy... My immediate boss was Mark Rowan when I first started.
I remember him, yeah.
And we're still good friends to this day, and we often meet up after the game. In fact, I haven't done it as much this season since the return, but we'll go to the Winslow and have a little Swifty Guinness. He loves a Guinness. So he was, and then Scott, and then Matt, who I work closely with now, still there. So from the guys on the security where I go in, where the ticket office is. That's the same guys that were there when I was there all those years ago. And it's always lovely to see Andy and Paul and Joe. And then you go through and there's Simon and there's Robbie, and they're all, always have great chat, always. And then there's Lee that stands by the dugout. They've all been there since as long as I can remember. And I work closely, the guy that sits beside me and sort of directs me. I've become really close to a guy called Nick Teal. And he keeps me in the straight and narrow as well, and runs through the away team pronunciations with me, which is really important. I think it's important to get those names right, because it's it's a big occasion, and he is real joy to work with. We just have a laugh. And I take 2 sachets of cup of soup every game, and we have a cup of soup at half time.
Rock and roll.
So I give him choices of flavours on a Wednesday. He's a vegetarian, so they always have to be a vegetable-based one. So we have a cup of soup at half time because we are rock and roll. But you're right, the family feel there, and you know Darren, don't you?
I do, yeah. Darren Griffiths, great guy.
Darren Griffiths is one of the friendliest, smiliest, loveliest guys. I just love his company. He recently had a milestone birthday. He was 60, but he still has a grin like a cheeky teenager that's just got up to no good. He just has got that look. His line to me, by the way, every time is when I come walking into Goodison, and I normally wear like a jumper with a shirt and a coat or a blazer, but he always looks at me and goes, "Top man, Rossie." Not you, your clothes. every time. But yes, you're right. There's a real family feel there as well.
Yeah, we always hear that as supporters, but when staff come in and out and players, they always say that was a great place to work and great people to work for. You've mentioned there about the pronunciation of some surnames. Has there been a few occasions you've looked and gone, oh my God?
I remember where transfer window, it was about 2007, and I had Sky Sports on, Sky Sports News, with the volume down, and I saw Everton news signing, and I saw this name pop up, and I went, oh my God, that's going to be a nightmare when it starts. And it was Dinia Billy Letonov.
Wow.
Billy.
Yeah.
Number 7, Dinia Billy Letonov. But they all called him Billy. I never called him Billy on the mic, but, then we got a guy on loan from Manchester City. That was very easy. Number 13, Joe.
Yeah.
Do you remember Joe?
Yeah.
That was good. I'll tell you a funny story. When we were in the Europa League, we were playing a Greek team. Mm-hmm. And then you look and you go, oh my God. So I write the away team out phonetically.
Okay.
So I write in my own handwriting. Even if it's John Smith, I'll write John Smith, but the names, I'll write them as they're pronounced.
Okay.
So I had written and gone through all these teams and found the pronunciations and written them all out phonetically, this Greek team. And the next thing, the interpreter come walking past and he goes, you've spelled them all wrong. And I goes, no, I've written them phonetically for when I'm reading them. I says, doesn't matter, they're all spelled wrong. And I'm trying to explain to him. And eventually he says, this is good for me.
Yeah. You nailed one at the test event. Me and my little boy were lucky enough to go to a test event at Bramley Moor a while back, and there was a young Everton player, and I couldn't say his name, and it came up on the screen, and I think everybody was waiting, is Rossie going to get this right? And you nailed it. You had it. But I can only imagine the fear.
Number 8, I think it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't dare pronounce it now, but...
I'll tell you one thing. We'll talk about the new stadium in a second, I guess.
Yeah.
But basically, because it's so big, there's a delay on my mic. Mm. So what I'm saying is coming back now. So what is coming back via the speakers. We can nip that in the bud next time.
Yeah.
Which is the 23rd, I think.
Sunday 23rd.
Sunday 23rd. Yeah. So yeah, that was a bit of a struggle actually, because and then you'll never hear it, but if you're sitting this close to me, you will hear me talking as I'm talking to you now.
Yeah,
and then you'll hear, because one of the guys from the youth team looked back and said, "Rossie, is that not doing you a bleeping head in?" But basically, what it is, it's so big for the cameras to be in sync with my mic. It has to be that way when I'm doing the pitch side stuff.
Yeah, on the screen, yeah.
But when I sit down to do the team news and that, they can adjust the mic so it's not having that 2-second delay. But when I started talking, I thought, this mic's not working. And then I started hearing myself come back. I went, oh, God. It was the same when I did Wembley Stadium. You know, when we played...
The delay?
There was a big delay. So when I went out to do our team news, I just switched myself off and just went through it. And give it my best shot, you know.
You sit in a very, very privileged seat.
Oh my
I think
God.
you could sell that seat for a quadruple what it's worth. You sit right in between the two dugouts with a great view of everything. Can you share any funny interactions or any stories you've seen with players? Have you had communications with players?
Yeah, I mean, the characters... the characters over the years. The Yak was a great character.
Yeah.
Tommy
Gravison.
Tommy Gravison was just a naughty boy. Tommy Gravison was a naughty boy, but really, really good fun. There was one time, it was, oh God, what year was it? Must have been about 2012. 2013. Phil Neville was coming back from injury, so we started on the bench. So I was doing the team news, and it was Aston Villa, and I think it was the number 11, number 12. And as I was reading my handwritten sheet, all written phonetically. A gust of wind came and blew it away. But I managed to catch it. But what it did was threw me off a little bit. So I think it was number 12 or number 11, Gabriel Agbonlahor.
Yes.
Agbonlahor wouldn't come out. And now, it's not the hardest word in the world to say. Agbonlahor.
Yeah.
You know. But it wouldn't. I said, Gabriel, and it just wouldn't come out. And Phil Neville was jumping at me. What's his name? Taking the mic. What's his name? So I'm getting towards the end. I'm thinking, I hope he stops this because I want our team news to be. It's the most important thing. I don't like getting an away team player's name wrong or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's a respect thing. But our team news, obviously, I can do that with my eyes closed. But I want to hit it every name. You know, with the gap in between each for the cheer from the crowd, and I want it perfect. And thankfully, Phil got off my case before we went into the mighty blues of Everton.
Where did that come from, the mighty blues? I just coined it, or
I just started it. I started this. Both teams are shaping up today, and now, ladies and gentlemen, this is how it's shaping up for the mighty blues of Everton. I just said it one time, and I thought, I feel comfortable with that.
It sounds so good when you say it, because you read. I don't know whether you have to, but at Goodison you read the away team out first.
Yeah.
And then when you say, and now for the might, it's like Evertonians have waited. My little boy's here in the studio, and he's waiting to cheer. He's Jordan Pickford's biggest fan. And when you give it to Jordan Pickford, he's on his seat, and it does add something to it. So many players, superstars from the home team and the away team must have been in your presence. Have you ever been a bit starstruck by anyone?
No, I mean, you know, when you're sitting in the presence of greatness, when, you know, love them or loathe them, Cristiano Ronaldo, David Beckham, you know, who's been there. But we also have had some great players. And I look at those players that have got mega high profile, but then I look at Tim Cahill and what he did and where he came from. And I really, really love that, you know, in a player. I think, what did Tim...
He came from
Millwall, out of ridiculously low fee. And
just over 1 million, yeah.
So, you know, what he did for our team and the passion. And that's another thing. Recently, we had a player on loan, Mangala, and I loved his passion. Give me a player that has got passion and loves the badge and plays for the fans every time he puts the shirt on, over someone who's got exceptionally brilliant talent. Give me that passionate player all day long.
That's an Everton player.
Yeah.
That's an Everton player.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy. He was really good. You know, there's so many people that I have seen come and go over the years, but starstruck probably isn't the word. I was a little bit starstruck once when I had to introduce on the pitch Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, I remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do. Did he have a big entourage with him and things? Was he the Hollywood superstar like I'd expect him to be, or was he accessible? Or?
Well, to be honest, he was coming up and down the corridor with Bill Kenwright, who obviously Bill got him there. God rest Bill. He was. There was no big entourage. No. There wasn't like Mariah Carey had turned up at Goodison Park with like 35 people, and you can't look me straight in the eye. No, he was fine. That was a surreal moment. That was. It was a half time or before the game he came on. It was one of the most. It was before. I think it was before kickoff. But there's a really funny clip of him taking a sip out of a cup of coffee, and I don't know whether it was too hot or too horrible. Any which way, his facial expression told 1,000 stories.
Yeah, I think that clip was on Match of the Day 2 on a Sunday. He highlighted that because it's a bit of a looser show than Match of the Day. I want to ask you about one player, and he wasn't here for a long time. I was starstruck in Liverpool City Centre in 2014 when I seen Samuel Eto'o in an Everton tracksuit. What was he like? Because he was a superstar.
You asked about characters. There was another character.
Yeah.
There was another character. And it was only a short time that he was with Everton. So, say most of the games he started on the bench would be fair to say.
Because he was aging, wasn't he? He was brought in for an impact sub kinds of,
And he scored a couple of goals for us. A couple of really good goals. He used to look at me, and the fourth official would always flash me the screen to say, coming off number 12, coming on number 5. He played in a number 5 shirt. He used to say to me, give me a big one. Give me a big one. So I would, please show your appreciation for whichever player was coming off. And then I would say, and say Tim Cahill, and Tim's replacement. And then I'd leave a little gap and I go, number 5, Samuel Eto'o. And he used to always look back and go,
the big Michael Buffer.
Yeah, I mean, I would really overdo it. And it's funny, recently, there was a name that flashed up on the screen and I thought, oh, there's going to be a tricky one in my first season back. Timmy Rabunam, number 42. But again, it's easy to say. It just looks in the way it's...
Well, you give him the big welcome. He came on and you was like, he's back. Welcome back, yeah.
Well, it's funny. Jesper Lindstrom had come off just a few... he wasn't replacing. He'd come off earlier. And Jesper Lindstrom looked up at me and did exactly that when I gave Tim... Yeah, and he's back. Number 42, Timmy Rabunam. Good player, really good player.
I think it was 2015 where you sort of went away and you were replaced, and I'm reading between the lines here. I think Radio City at the same time they stopped doing the live commentary. Was that linked? Is that why you went away for a while?
Yeah, basically, I mean, look, things, everything costs and things are looked at, and I think the commentary for both, because we did, if Everton were at home, they would be on AM, and if Liverpool were away, they'd be on FM, and then vice versa. Yeah. So you give the best quality to the team that's away. So that's, I think the commentary for both teams stopped at the same time, and with that, then it was deemed that it shouldn't really, maybe not continue at Everton. And we had conversations. Scott, who I still work with, who's doing brilliant, absolutely brilliant, a real gentleman. Sort of, we had this conversation and we parted company with the best of friends. We always, for seeing one another, we always have a drink with one another. Met him one time on a plane. We were flying off on a bit of a holiday, and always great to see him. So that was that. And then I got the call asking, would I come back for the last season? So to be the last voice at Goodison. Yeah. And the first voice of the new stadium.
Amazing.
Which was, and to be honest, I was more nervous returning to Goodison than I was when I first started in 2005, because things had moved on, and obviously I've got a lot more to do now as far as in-camera stuff, which I never ever had to do before. Yeah. And I just wanted to get that right, and I wanted to really do it in a way that wasn't too robotic. I wanted to do it in the way I would do my radio show, in the way I just, do it with a smile. And then get into like stadium announcing mode when I had to do the team news and all the rest of it. So I was quite nervous about that. So, and then there was a massive gap, wasn't there? So we had a couple of games. I was settling in, and then there was a massive gap for internationals, and
I hate them.
And it was like, just as I was finding my feet again. But so it was a real honour to be even considered. Never mind asked, to come back.
In the period you were away, did you miss it?
Yeah, I did actually. The first year, I'd only just started really seeing what was now my wife. Yeah. So we had loads of free time at weekends. But I filled in a couple of times. Filled in definitely against Everton, Wolverhampton a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. And that buzz of walking down towards the ground and walking, through the doors and going into the office and getting the team news, and wow, this is brilliant. And it was great to see all the old faces again, in the media room as well. It was really nice. So the answer to that was I did miss it,
The fact that this is, there's been a little bit of news this week that maybe somehow Goodison may stay for the women and stuff. I don't think that's been confirmed, but there might be an element that Goodison can remain there for a little bit. But the fact remains that Everton's men's team, and the Everton that we grew up on historically, this is the last ever season at Goodison Park. Now, I can tell you as a fan, the clamour for tickets this season is beyond a joke. Everybody wants to take the granddad again. They want to take the little kids again. They want to go with their old mates they've done 10 years ago. You can't get in. You cannot get in. Is there added pressure? Do you feel at enormity that you're the voice? You're probably going to be the last person who speaks at Goodison Park on a live Everton's men's game. Does there feel that pressure?
I am full of dread. I'm not going to lie to you. For the last game, I am full of dread for many reasons. I think it's going to be very, very high in emotion day. Yeah. It's going to be it's a bit like, the derbies, the build up to the derbies. I get a bit nervous, I can't explain why I'm dreading it. I think it's going to be a very, very sad, emotional day for thousands in attendance, thousands if they're streaming it, watching it. And it's one that I think about, I'm trying to sort of doze off. What's it going to be like on the last day?
Yeah.
Will it be any different? What announcements will I have to make that I've never done before?
Yeah, of course.
Those kind of things. The saying goodbye to Goodison is not going to be nice, but my God, that new stadium. I walked out of the tunnel 2 weeks ago to do the under-18 team news.
What's it like behind the scenes there for staff? Is it different?
I didn't see as much. I didn't see as much. I went straight out to the ground.
Okay.
And I did all my prep on the ground. When I walked out and looked up, now walking out of the tunnel at Goodison is phenomenal. It's like, wow, when I walked out in the new stadium, I was it was like so daunting.
Yeah.
It's so big. It's like, oh my God. And then there was only 10,000 there for the under 18s. I think there's a few more, about 15, I think. Is it?
25 they're looking at.
Oh,
yeah.
25,000. What that is going to look like and sound like with full capacity on match day is going to be just something else.
Yeah.
I kept looking up and I'm going, there's another row of seats. It's just something to behold.
Yeah.
You were there.
I was there, and what I will say is the acoustics were brilliant. Your voice came through so clear. The sirens and the Z cars. It was. When we finish, I'll show you the video. I took over a little boy there, and you can hear the acoustics. And for me as a supporter, it feels next level. It feels like you're sort of going from a council house to a new build. Like, you'll always love where you grow. You'd always love your council house and where you grew up. But this new build is going to give you so much more. It feels fresh and it feels new. I just wanted to get your perception with the same for you. Did it feel like a new place? This place is just...
Listen, just walking around outside to get where I will be going, the doors that I go through every week for next season, just walking there on the outside of the stadium, it's like, this isn't real. Yeah. It was... and again, I can't emphasize enough coming out of the tunnel and just looking up and around. And Darren was the first person I saw, Daz. I went, oh my God, Daz, I knew it was big. But this has just blown my mind.
It's like your first time there when you worked?
Yeah, that was the first time there. I was supposed to go to an induction and I couldn't make it. I had a meeting in Manchester and I couldn't make it. So yeah, that was my first time there. It's incredible.
I'm so excited to see what they will do with the fan plaza outside. I know Julia Bowles, amazing presenter, amazing person, does the fan zone at Goodison in the park end now, and that's quite small. I think the fan plaza itself is the proposition. It's going to be the largest fan plaza in the Premier League. So I think it's going to be an event each game.
Well, it will be, and there's no better host than Julia. I've worked with Julia for many, many years. Obviously, she was a journalist and newsreader in sports at Radio City when I first joined. So I've known Julia for 20 years now, and I don't see as much of Julia as I'd like to see because we've been good friends for so many years. However, I do see her in action because she's on the monitors in our office when we're getting ready, and she's the consummate pro. Her delivery, and she always has a lovely. She delivers with a smile, which I think is really important. Yeah, and so she's doing a great job, and it'll be a bigger audience, but no better person.
Can I ask? And if you can't say, that's fine. Are you going to be part of it next season? Are you going to be the matchday announcer at Bramley Moor?
Yeah, I've been told that I will be there. So that's basically what they said. The last voice of Goodison, the first voice of the new stadium.
Brilliant.
So.
I can only speak for me and my friends, but we're really pleased that you're back. As Evertonians, I think you do bring something, and it's sort of a little bit because you had that 8, 9, maybe 10-year gap. I'm not sure what it was. It was sort of like you go, wow, this is how it used to. And that coincided with David Moyes' return as well. It starts to feel like it did in the mid-2000s, late 2000s. The whole place is the same. As an adopted Evertonian, has it been good to see David Moyes back for you?
Really has. Even in his first game, which was a defeat to Villa, there was something different about that team that stepped out on the pitch that night. Yeah. There was something different. There was more attacking. There was more positivity. And again, I mentioned before passion. When you raise the passion level, the fans will forgive you. if it doesn't come together and we don't get 3 points, the fans will forgive you.
Yeah.
I would say that anyway. And there's just a new level of grit, of positivity. Of course, my mates are all texting me, see what happens when you get Moisey and Rossie back in the dugout. I mean, the amount of times
that's all we need.
I've had it that you see what happens. Oh, like I make any difference. And I mean, Jake O'Brien.
Wow, where did he come from? Because
he was on the bench for the start of the season quite a bit. And I always loved when he came on. I really, really liked the way he played. I'm not sure if you noticed it at the Manchester United game when he ran from one end of the pitch to the other. Did you see that?
I do. On your side, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was like Usain Bolt. I just said, and so Nick, who I mentioned before, Nick Teal, who directs me, I went, did you just see that?
Like a steam train.
It was like unbelievable. Great that he got his first goal
on Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. That was brilliant.
He's such, and if you keep hold of Jared Branthwaite as well, and you've got big James Tarkowski there, all of a sudden, and Jordan Pickford, who for me, pound for pound, will match any goalkeeper in the league. I think defensively, you're okay, and I think now David Moyes is back, it does feel like going into Bramley-Moore, and I don't want to disrespect the previous manager because he had the tough ends of the stick, points deductions, and I think he was needed.
Yeah.
But it just feels a little bit more positive. Goodison feels like a good place, and Bramley-Moore. And I do want to mention, we mentioned Julia there, but I think you're part of what seems to me from the outside to be like a little bit of a family. You've got Sarah, you got David Hughes, and they do the socials and things. Does it feel like that for you? It feels like you're maybe big brother or dad, and then the other ones are...
Yeah, I mean, I love match day because I always get a big hug from Sarah at pitch side. And I've known Sarah for a long time. She did a lot of work on Radio City Talk, the sports side of it. And she's just fabulous at what she does as well. It's great. It's always great to see. The welcome back she gave me and the positivity, because I said to you, I was a little bit nervous, and social media, was, you do, if you trip up at all, you'll be pounced on in some ways. So that was sort of added to a little bit of pressure about returning. But then I remember speaking to Sarah on match day in the first game, and she went, "You're going to smash it, Rossie. You're going to smash it." She gave me this big hug. Really, brilliant. It was very, very comforting. You know what I mean? It's just what I needed at that point that afternoon.
Yeah, like I said, it looks from the outside that it's a really nice, a tight-knitted team that you've got there. We'll wind it down. I've got a couple more questions, then we'll get on with you Saturday afternoon. We really appreciate you giving us so much of your time.
It's absolutely brilliant.
When I'm in the stand and I'm holding my little boy in a 98th minute Merseyside derby equaliser, and the chaos that ensued, is it hard not to get swept up in there? Because you're in a prime position as well.
Let me just tell you about that. So, we took the early lead. Then we dropped 2 goals.
Yeah.
Then there was added time. And then there was the head clashes.
Yeah.
So that added on to the added time. Right. We got that 98th minute goal. I gave it the big one. And next thing I look up at the screen, VAR. I said to Nick, because if it was disallowed, I have to announce it. I said, Nick, please. He said, Rossie, you have to, if it's disallowed. You don't know what I was going through. If I had to go on that mic at Goodison Park at the last ever Merseyside derby and say VAR has deemed offside, it's a no-goal. Imagine if I had to do that, and I would have. So and didn't it take a while before the VAR actually gave us the result? I'm telling you now, it ruined that moment for me like you wouldn't believe, because my heart was in my mouth that I would have to go on and say if that goal had been disallowed. And when it came up, I could have kissed Nick and everyone around me, Mike from the Premier League, and I gave it an absolute mega, as loud as I could. It was, and I tell you what, I walked out the stadium that night. I walk to the stadium from my house, and then I walk halfway home, and I stop off in a little pub on the way up the road beside the college up there.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So it was a weekday night, so I said to my wife, I'm not going in for a drink because it's late and all the rest. I want to get home. I was coming out of the stadium, and I bumped into Derek Manfield,
Legends.
who's just been inducted into the Everton Giants last week. And he's an Everton legend, played for maybe the greatest Everton team ever. And he was just gazing. He was full of emotion. This is after the derby. He was like a football fan. He wasn't like an Everton legend. He was appreciating that last minute, that single point of that last ever Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. He was just like floating on air. And it was such a lovely thing to see that here is Derek Mountfield.
Yeah.
He's just a fan like you and me, even though he's played for one of the greatest sides of all time. And it was a lot. I remember walking away thinking, you have yourself the best night, Derek. You really, have yourself the best night, because, my God, you've earned it over the years. He's brilliant.
And that's an amazing story. I didn't think of the pressure that, because obviously you would have had to announce decision no goal. And
Mate.
You're going through anxiety. And where I sit in the park ends, we can see screens because we're quite close to the corporates, and we could see they were trying to rule it out for offside, then a foul, and I can only imagine what you were going through.
It dragged his feet as well, didn't it? Yeah. It dragged his feet. And I was going, please, Nick. He goes, I see you have to. It's like part of your job, and I'm going, this is a nightmare. I could walk away from this right now.
You'd have got booed. Not you, but the whole place would have.
I know that. I would have got booed. And it was just, don't let me be the bearer of bad news. Nick, you can have the mic. Here's your moment of glory. You announced a no goal. But luckily, it didn't end that way. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, what a great night that was. And a fitting Merseyside derby, I think, under the lights with both teams fighting in the crowds and good-natured as well. There was, with the fans, obviously, there was no trouble. Can't say that much about the players. That's a whole new podcast for a whole I've got one more question for you before I do. I just want to ask, we've started on music and we're ending on football. For me, they go hand in hand. The moods affect us, the mood changes. Do you feel like that?
There's three things that unites people all over the world, and it's sport, music, and food.
Yeah.
I can get into a cab and I'll be chatting to a guy, and I can suss out very quickly that he's not from Liverpool or not from this country, and ask where we're from. And the one, if I don't know much about the country, I'll ask about, what would a typical dish be? What would your... Not a restaurant style, but what would your mum? And as soon as you talk about and show an interest in people's, the cultures, if you want to use, culture, food, sport, and music, I think unites everybody, and I love all three, as you can see.
And we spoke all three. What a fitting way. Look, I'd love to get you back on in the future and ask you what Goodison Park meant to you. Mm-hmm. But whilst she's still here now, I'm going to ask a modified version of that question. What's Goodison Park mean to you?
Well, Goodison Park will now be a part of my work life for 11 years. That's a big chunk, 11 years. And when I say work, it's not, because they say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, if you know what I mean. And Goodison Park is just like home. It's like when I get there, I immediately slot in and I feel part of it. I've never felt like the outsider. That's the DJ guy of the radio that does a bit of bitch announcing. I'm made feel as every bit part as the full-time staff when I get there. Yeah. And I'm going to miss Goodison. I mean, in the way we're going to, as you mentioned, this phenomenal stadium, and that will probably soften the blow a little bit. Yeah, it will soften the blow, but memories have been made, and that's one thing that will always last is the memories. Memories at Goodison. Some good, some bad, some funny, some hilarious. Me mispronouncing Gabriel Agbonlahor. Can I tell you a funny thing about that? Yeah. So I don't think I was on Twitter when I messed up with Gabby's name. The next season I was on Twitter. So all the Blues were going, Rossie, are you going to go with Gabby tomorrow? Again, I'm going, well, it's such an easy name to say, but I know now that our fans are going to be listening out for me saying Gabriel Agbonlahor, right? So I'm doing the team news, and I go, number 11, Gabriel Agbonlahor. So our fans cheer. So there's a certain section of our fans they all cheer, and then he's substituted, I think, and I go, coming off number 11, Gabriel Agbonlahor, and the cheer again. He's looking around thinking, am I coming here on a free transfer or something? And I don't know about it. He can't work it out. It was the funniest thing that our fans got onto it because I'd had the slip up the season before. They actually cheered, and they were cheering me pronouncing his name. Yeah. I remember saying to Stephen Warnock, who was playing for Villa at the time, and I said, Stephen, we were in the Joe Mercer suite and I bumped into him, and I know Stephen of old. And I said, would you pass on my apologies? I said, because I feel a little bit bad about that. And he goes, will I pass on my apologies? We'll be ripping him on Monday morning in the training ground. And I goes, yeah, but just tell him I'd pass on my apologies. Yeah, do that, Rossie.
Look, it's been an amazing podcast. As you can, I've got tears in my eyes laughing. We've gone from Chris Talent to Samuel Eto'o to Everton Football Club to
Gabriel Alabagbonlahor.
But I just want to say we're big fans of you here at the podcast. Thank you so much for coming. We hope we can get you back on in the future.
That would be great. Yeah, it'd be fabulous. Maybe halfway through next season when I've done for a few games at our brand new stadium.
You're brilliant. But like I said, we're big fans, and thank you so much for coming down across the park.
Thank you.
Guys, hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have. Like I said, we went everywhere with that podcast. I've been trying to hide my tears of laughter, and obviously a really great tribute to great Phil Easton in there as well. Goodison Park is closing down. We are 5 games out. The voice of Goodison Park joined us today, and we hope you enjoyed it. My name is Ian Mills. Up the toffees. That is right, Rossie La.